Welcome to the Rise Up For You podcast, where thought leaders, entrepreneurs, and executives from around the world share their practical tips, strategies, and stories to help you unleash your potential and achieve your goals. Your journey of growth to become your best starts now.
Hi, I'm Netalina Nasruddin, the CEO and the founder of Rise Up For You and the podcast host of the Rise Up For You podcast. We have another amazing guest for you today. But before we jump into our show, I want to remind you all that our show is completely ad-free and commercial-free. That's right. We want to make sure that you get full access to this podcast interview without any interruptions. So I have just a really small ask for you. We would be absolutely honored if you can share this podcast, send it to your family, your friends, your coworkers. Help us get the message out for this podcast because we are bringing you amazing interviews every single week with executives, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders that are here to help you become your absolute best. Share this podcast with anyone that you think would love to listen to it. Don't forget to subscribe and like so that you can get access every single week to the episodes that we're bringing straight to you. We appreciate you, and without you, this podcast would not exist. Okay, what do you say? You ready to jump into today's interview? I'll see you there. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Rise Up For You podcast. This is your host, Netalina Nasruddin with Rise Up For You. Very excited to have you here today and have another amazing guest join us. Please, wherever you are in the world, to help me welcome Lisa Thomas. Hi, Lisa.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. I'm actually really excited about our conversation today because Lisa and I are going to be jumping into branding and what that looks like for both on the personal side, corporate side, overall professional side. Something we haven't talked about on the podcast for a while, but I definitely think where we're going in today's world with artificial intelligence, everything that's happening in society, it's definitely a critical point that everyone needs to be aware of. But before we jump in, tell the audience a little bit about yourself and who you are in your own words, Lisa.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm the founder and CEO of Main Street Marketing Partners, and we're an agency that started during the height of the pandemic. And really, I was doing something that I do always, which was just advising some of my colleagues on their website, oddly enough. I came out of a web agency and looking at his messaging and just giving him some advice and saying, there's a disconnect here. This doesn't really represent who you are, because I knew who he was. And he turned to me and he said, well, why don't we just hire you? And I never had really thought about that because I was doing what I love to do, which is just to really help people realize their full potential. And so I jumped in, and it was my first branding project, and it was very successful. And then from there, just continued to get referrals. But that is really the kind of the heart of what I do, is helping people tap into the core belief of who they are and putting that into marketing messages that can resonate out with their customers.
Yeah, I love that. So our audience here, Lisa, is both, the working professional, right? Everything from C-suite to entry level, to entrepreneurs that are just out there completely crushing it, to those that are just starting. So where I want to start with branding is, let's start like on the business side of things when it comes to a brand. Even with some of the companies that we're working with right now, currently, we're seeing a lot of rebranding happening. So I'm curious, give us a little insight on the journey of branding and where it's going, especially in today's world, and how you see it shifting on a business corporate level.
Yeah, well, I think people are tapping in, especially with social media. People are realizing that you really need to connect with people on an emotional level. And one of my favorite sayings, I do a lot of networking. And so from a personal level, there's that saying, you never get a second chance to make a good first impression. And people think about that personally, but they don't really transfer that into what their corporate brand looks like. And so particularly, for instance, a brand on a website, that is kind of your digital handshake. And sometimes it's the first time somebody sees your company, and it is your introduction to them. So how are you coming across? What is the message that you're saying? And so I'll have people come to me and say, well, I want you to do my website, or do you do social media? And I'll say, we need to take a step back. We need to take a look at what is it that you're saying. And it's not just what is it that you do, but what's behind that? What's the inspiration behind your brand? And that's what really makes brands successful, is when they can connect on that, make people in feel something and be inspired by their brand. Then that's where the decisions are made, and that's where I take people through the journey.
Now, when you say, what are you saying? What is your message saying? I'm assuming, but correct me if I'm wrong, that you're talking more about just the words. Are we talking also about like the colors that we use, the fonts that we use? Can you explain that a little bit more?
Yes, absolutely. They work hand in hand. I start with the messaging. It starts with the words, and then the colors and the fonts and the images, everything, the overall look and feel will reflect what the words say, but it really starts with those words. So sometimes that's a hard concept for people to get around, but it really does. And I'm a huge fan of Simon Sinek, who talks about the power of the why. And he says people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. So it really starts with really kind of what's in your heart. What is the thing that motivates you? Because that is what will transfer out. So it's kind of an inside out approach to marketing and to branding. But once you have those words, then you can layer the colors and the whole brand roadmap on top of that.
Do you find that clients that are more in, I would say, like a technical field, or more of like in the trenches field, like manufacturing, engineering, do you find that your type of clients have a hard time doing that? Or is there a way to take something, an industry that's so complex, and actually put like an emotional connection to it?
You know, they're actually my favorite people to work with, because typically they're so smart and they really know the technology, and they can tell you all about the technology and what they do. But they have a really hard time stepping back and understanding why that's exciting and why that matters. And one of the things I say is, you know, there's several questions to ask yourself. Why am I doing what I'm doing? Why should somebody want to do business with me? And why does anybody care? I mean, at the bottom line, why should somebody care about what you're doing? And it's communicating that. What is that technology going to be doing? How is that going to be impacting your customers? And once you can make that connection where you're actually changing lives, that changes the whole trajectory. One of the industries that I work with is in the medical device field. And there are some products and some inventions that are coming down the pike that are just mind-blowing. But if it just stays with the technology, it doesn't come off the page, and it doesn't move investors, it doesn't move customers. But once you tell somebody that, no, I can change the quality of your life with this, that changes the whole story.
When you know, as I mentioned, we have a lot of executives that listen to the podcast that we work with globally, and we've seen a lot of companies rebrand in the last couple years with our clients. How does a corporation know when to rebrand? Like, when do they understand that our brand isn't working anymore, or it needs a facelift? How do they know when should they make that transition to completely rebrand themselves? I mean, we've had some companies that change their name completely. So yes. How do we know when that should happen?
Well, I think, you know, for me, one of the assessments that I do is I look at the website and I say, does this really describe what we're doing? You know, just from that standpoint, are we getting the traction that we used to get? I mean, sales is obviously the bottom line. Are we growing? If there's some stagnation there, then that's maybe a good indication that something's not going right. And just taking a look at that. Because, you know, it's funny, websites can become outdated within 3 or 4 years. And it's not a box to be checked, but it's something that is constantly evolving. And so there are a number of organizations that I'm involved with, and all of a sudden you look one day and you look at your website and you go, oh my gosh, we look so dated. We don't look like what's out there and current and modern. So I would just say, if it seems like you're stuck and sales aren't going well, or you're talking to people and you realize that there's a disconnect between what they think you do and what you actually do, that's the time to rebrand.
Okay. That's all great advice. Thank you. I want to pivot a little bit, because as you know, here at Rise Up For You, we do a lot of work with the people skills and the soft skills, and like maintaining that human connection, right? Not just building technical skills. And with the rate of artificial intelligence and with everything that's changing in the workforce, I personally believe, and I want to dive into this with you, that a personal brand is critical for everyone. And oftentimes we think that personal branding is more for like the entrepreneur or the person that's trying to build a business. But even those that are in corporate, I do think it's important. And I always say that everybody has a brand. You might not own it, but you do have a brand. So can you speak to us a little bit about building a personal brand as a professional, no matter where you are, what industry you're in, the importance of it, and like how to even start looking at that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's where people are going to connect with you. There are people like Brene Brown that has made being vulnerable, something that is to be embraced and not run away from. And I would say that tapping into your story, it's something that nobody can take from you. You may have another competitor that has a similar product. You can have statistics and things like that that are similar, and you can argue facts and things like that. But the one thing that no one can take away from you is your personal story. So people that can tap into that in a way and be really proud of that and go out and represent themselves with their own personal brand and really understanding, why are you doing what you're doing? You're there to make an impact, and it's going beyond, making money or the bottom line or what have you. It's what gets you out of bed. What is your purpose? And then what you find is what great leaders do, like Martin Luther King Jr., is that you find that people will follow you because you make true believers out of them. So there are a lot of great brands that you can point to that have done this. Apple, for instance, when they came out with their Think Different campaign, it was being disruptive in the marketplace. It's something that they have continued to do throughout the decades, ever since they started this campaign back in the early 2000s.
So for those that are listening that are in corporate that might say, well, like, I'm a manager or I'm a supervisor, like this does not apply to me. What would you say to them? And what would be like that first step of them recognizing that their own personal brand is something of importance?
Well, I think we each get to touch people on a daily basis, just by being in the workplace. You have no idea the impact that you may have. So whether you're sitting behind a desk or coming into contact with whoever, you have an ability to change that person's life positively or negatively. So how we come across and the words that we use are so powerful. I always get a kick out of that. Sticks and stones can break my bones, but words will never hurt me. I think, that is just the opposite of what actually the truth is. The truth is that our words really do matter. And, they're finding that people, when they're making decisions, people make decisions as much as 95% because of their emotions and because of their intuition and not because of rational thinking. Well, what does that say? How we come across to people and how we make them feel really makes a difference. So it's how do we want to come across and what kind of a life do we want to live? Do we want to, and there, it's small ways. Our brand is walking into a grocery store and smiling at the clerk or being kind, just a simple act of kindness. That all goes to our personal brand because it starts with who we are and our belief about ourselves, which translates into our brand as well.
So for somebody that's listening, would you say the first step is defining, their values or their belief system or just how they want people to receive them? What would you say is that first step that they should, reflect upon or write out to ensure that they can begin, displaying that personal brand in a way that's cohesive with them?
Right. I mean, honestly, it's simple. It is as simple as asking the question, why? And it sounds so simple, but it's difficult, but it really is saying and breaking it down because, we get going in our lives and things are so busy that we stop and we forget why we started doing what we did in the first place. I mean, at some point we were all going along and living our life, and then something happened that put us into the position that we are in currently. Especially for startups, there was something that caused somebody to want to start a company. Why? What is that? What was that purpose? What was that belief that you had that you could do something that would make a difference? And that it's really tapping into that. And then who are those people out there that also believe that? And what kind of an impact are you going to make on those people? That's huge. I mean, I'm working with a startup bank right now, And their purpose is really to help businesses. And they do it in a way that's very customized. They will either meet with people in person, they will have them come into the bank, but they make it a very personalized experience. But at the heart of it is they really want to help these businesses succeed. And that's the heart of what they do. And that's what is translated in their brand.
Mm-hmm. So for those that are listening, that are, again, like working professionals that aren't entrepreneurs or running their own business, a lot of times when we work with them on a soft skills level, we say, you need to build your personal brand because there's no receipt of what you do or anything of who you are online, for example. And then they come back and there's like 4 different LinkedIn pages that are made. So I'm curious, from your perception, when somebody starts building their own personal brand and they want to almost separate it from their professional brand, but I personally think they should be the same, but you're the expert. So I'm curious on what your thoughts are on that. Because we do have people that they now have like 2 different Facebook groups or pages and 2 different Instagrams and 2 different LinkedIns, but technically as the personal brand, it should be connected, no?
Yes, no, I completely agree. I mean, I think it makes you relatable. So if you're just all business, I mean, I think you just think about your own personal relationships or your relationships with your colleagues. The ones that you probably feel the closest to are the ones where you know their story, where you see behind what the facade is. And when somebody can see that and really can understand the heart of who they are, I think that's where we move people. We're not moving people by throwing facts and figures and things like that at them. We're moving people because we make them true believers in what it is that we're doing. So our personal brand, well, we can't separate that. We're a holistic human being. So I think it translates into both.
Fantastic. I love that. Lisa, thank you so much for joining us and providing some of your marketing insights. I'm sure we'll have you back on as we continue to change and navigate, what's happening in society, especially with AI. I'd love to jump into the power section of the interview and ask you some rapid fire questions that we always ask our guests. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. As you know, we always like to ask, if you were to leave the world with one final message, we call it the golden nugget here at Rise Up For You, what would your golden nugget be?
I would say you can do it. And the reason I say that is because I've had people in my life that said that to me when I didn't think I could. And just that having somebody believe in you and saying, no, go for it. You can do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Rise Up For You, we're really big on values, and we have non-negotiable values here. I know that's a big part of branding, as well as having your values. What would you say is a value for you that's a non-negotiable?
I have to bring in my faith. My faith is a huge guide for me. It is my rock. And so for others, it is, what is it that you believe in? That my faith for me is everything.
I love that. And finally, I have one more question for you. But before I ask, tell us where we can find you on social media, LinkedIn, if people are interested in checking out Main Street Marketing. Where can we find you online?
Yeah. Main Street Marketing Partners. The website is msmarketingpartners.com. I would love to talk with you. I'm big on consultations, so happy to provide a free assessment for anybody that wants me to take a look at their website, just needs to talk through what their messaging is frustrated. Happy to have that conversation.
Fantastic. And we'll make sure we put all of that in the show notes as well. Final question for you, Lisa. As you know, we are Rise Up For You. What comes to mind for you when you hear that phrase?
What comes to mind is encouragement, which is what I am all about. And I just love the encouraging nature of what you do, because I heard somebody say this one time, everybody needs somebody to believe in them. And so I think that is amazing, is just knowing that what the possibilities are and having somebody to encourage you.
Thank you. Lisa, thank you so much for joining us here today on the Rise Up For You podcast. And thank you everyone for tuning in today. Every single week, we are bringing you brand new podcast episodes from experts, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders from around the world that are here to help you be your absolute best. Whether you're leading a team, whether you're growing yourself personally and professionally, we are here to help you be your absolute best. Thank you for joining us. Don't forget to tune into the next podcast episode, and I will see you next time. Lisa, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed today's podcast. Before you leave, don't forget to subscribe to our podcast and YouTube channel and check us out on social media. We are everywhere, from LinkedIn to Instagram to Facebook, at our simple handle at Rise Up For You. On every single platform, it's exactly the same. And we're providing new content on every single platform, so there's something different everywhere. So don't forget to subscribe to our channel, subscribe to our podcast, and connect with us on social media. I'll see you next time.